it is handy to have that. It's just always dedicated, set aside, and then have 8 individual tracks going boom, 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 and everything on your screen goes boom, 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 boom. Hello, and welcome to my very first TouchDesigner tutorial, my very first Reaper tutorial, and my very first tutorial. So, do you want a story?
I think a stranger is like a punk rocker that drinks beer all day and sits around in a vacant lot. A stranger looks mean and ugly.
There's 2 programs in this world that I have fallen in love with. And the first one I discovered a couple years ago, and it was Reaper. It just makes sense. And any way I want it to make more sense than it does out of the box, it does. And this whole customizable, easily accessible software is like quickest way to my heart. And a year and a half ago, I discovered TouchDesigner, which, for 1,000 reasons, is the best software. Planet Earth, for sure. Maybe the universe. I don't know. That's debatable. But not too many people are using both of these softwares in unison, in harmony, because there's a lot of two-way communication that can happen. But just using stock Reaper, and even the trial version of TouchDesigner can open things up pretty quickly. And I don't really know where you're at, but I'm going to approach this series like you know a little Reaper, or you're willing to learn Reaper to get started in doing audio reactive real-time visuals. This is a little component I made that I use at the start or the middle of every single project, because does that mean anything? Is it a good thing? I don't know.
Let's start with the basics.
Getting up and running with Reaper, it's a matter of when you install the software, make sure you check the little box for the additional add-ons or whatever to include ReaRoute. That basically allows you to create virtual hardware sends. And then in TouchDesigner, and you're going to have only the latency of your plugins and whatever buffer settings you set on the TouchDesigner side. I'm going to assume you've installed software before, so install Reaper, install the ReaRoute extensions, install TouchDesigner, and then fire them both up. Okay, here we are, and we've got Reaper and one track. All that's happening is my mic. As long as you can get your inputs in and pull up this routing right here is where you create a new hardware send. And at the top of the list is going to be all the things for your interface that you actually have, your physical outs, and I've got a bunch of them. But at the bottom of the list, you've got ReaRoute 1 and 2, blah, 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 blah. And even further down, you've got all these individual ones. Right now, all we've got going on is 9 and 10 are going out, and you can see that that's my mains in Reaper. And then this one here, I've got my input for the microphone going through ReaRoute 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All these little things on the side are the outs. So here's the network, here's the instructions, but really you shouldn't have to go in there for much. I've built some controls in for just setting up everything all together. Let's bring in a fake drum set. Okay, so here's can you hear that? We've got this thing going on. Here I've got kick, and I'm going to open up the routing, and I'm going to add a new hardware output, and I'm going to go down to the list, and I'm going to give this to ReaRoute 1. Boom. Boom goes the kick. I've got a snare here. Let's send that to 2. All right. I've got a hi-hat of sorts. Let's send that to 3. And something I decided to call extra. And we'll give that 4. All right. So now we've got all of this showing up as individual channels in TouchDesigner. Oh, another thing. Okay. Let's go back into all of these. Talking latency again. There are, under your hardware sends, if you really want to minimize this, any plugins you have, for the most part, are going to introduce a little bit of latency. And it might not be that noticeable, but the fact that this is the first step in a whole bunch of computering going on, then let's just make it as easy as possible. As soon as you're not thinking about this as being audio information and it being triggers and just little bits of data that you're in control of to push parameters within the bounds of what looks good in your project, you don't need these plugins. So under the hardware reroute options, you've got post fader, post pan, pre fader, post effects. If you go pre-effects, then it's just going to be processing the audio before your chain, piping straight in or whatever. And we can always amplify those signals in TouchDesigner. And if they're not for the ear, they don't have to be the same. We're going to have exactly what your mixer session is coming out through 9 and 10. So go pre-effects. Anything you want low latency, go pre-effects. Don't worry about the levels or how it sounds. Have I said this enough? Probably not, because I'm still forgetting all the time. Alright, so now we've got pre-effects on our instrument routing. We've got very clear audio coming through, but all this seems locked or it's just jumping. I made this reset button, which you click it and it just kind of toggles off and on all these, and that will treat any weird stuff that seems like it's effing with your S. And so now we very clearly got these signals coming through, and they're just audio, which isn't really, you can't just tether this to your scale parameters or whatever, but there's pretty simple ways of making this information useful right off the bat. And I guess that probably sounds like a part 2. Goal met for the most part. It's as good as anything I do gets. All right, now one last thing. If you want to record what's happening like I am here using OBS and the NDI plugin, have NDI installed on your computer, have the NDI for OBS plugin installed in, we do not need this drum soundtrack. Have the NDI plugin for OBS installed. Then you're able to add NDI sources, and you just make sure it's named the same as what's coming out of TouchDesigner, because TouchDesigner has, under the top section, you could type in NDI. There's an NDI in, NDI out. So this is going to send video over your network to OBS or another computer or whatever, wherever you need it. But more recently, they've added this section for an audio chop, which, these are all coming out in their own as mono. And I've got the mains separated as left and right. And so you've got 2 ways you can combine it. And it's, you can see here, this is a merge, and you just plug them both in and it merges it. We've got main left and right, and you can just drag that onto your right where it says audio chop. And it will reference that, and it will send that along with your video. And I found that to be very, very much in sync for my needs. Alternatively, you could add a a math, and that is also very good for combining. There's one, there's two. I could replace this with this, and it should all be the same. TouchDesigner doesn't, this math will take whatever it is and add it, multiply it. There's always more than one way of doing things. Let's see if that comes out looking like a tutorial. Enough to get you on your feet. If you got questions, suggestions, I'd love to hear them. If you watch this, I would love to know that. Because let me tell you, my brain can translate into these worlds much easier than I can explain them. I'm getting to the point where I can work in real time with my thoughts and build stuff from scratch, which feels great. But now that people are asking me to explain some of this stuff, it's harder. I've spent a week trying to figure out how to make this stuff helpful for more people than myself. And I would love to bring people along on my journey, but if no one's watching and it's this much work, it's a bad idea. So, like I said, I'm willing to do more. It's very exciting, and I also think it's very accessible. I figured this out through a lot of guesswork and research and asking people questions, but I would very easily just save you people the trouble and knock down some of those hurdles before they ever come up. So, is that worth your time? Let me know.